Everybody, welcome to Real Gamer News. I'm joined today once again by iGeekReviews.com. What's up, guys? Say hello.
Hey there.
Yo.
And
I'm not wearing pants.
well, pants are optional at this podcast as long as you don't show everybody what you got. So, basically, we're gonna be talking about digital distribution versus physical distribution, and there's a lot of kind of points to that. Videos that you'll be seeing are provided by our video partner, Gamers Pray HD on YouTube, and you can check him out on there. And also check out our websites if you feel so inclined, where we do reviews and news on tech and games and all that good stuff at realgamernews.com with the Z at the end, and igeekreviews.com. So, alright, let's get into it. Now, the first video, by coincidence, that just happened to play on this video stream that we got going was Heroes of the Storm, and that kind of brings me right into the topic to the point where there's some games that digital distribution has entirely made possible, right? Like MOBA games and free-to-play games that you can get like a piece of an experience for free and maybe just stay only playing for free, but then you can pay in a little bit of money and you get more of an experience, which that has turned into good things and bad things in the industry. And obviously, like statistically speaking, it's probably mostly bad things, but it's easy to just ignore bad games. You don't have to play them. So, like, you know, there are some seriously good free-to-play games, I would argue. And then there's the fact that there's the fact that digital distribution games, they might someday no longer be yours. Like, in the sense that if I have a disc or a cartridge, the only thing stopping me from having that is if I lose track of it or if I break it. But if I keep that contained in a nice little safe somewhere in my house or whatever, and every time I move I bring that safe with me or whatever, then there's theoretically I can have that game forever and play that game forever. But with digital distribution, you know, hard drives die a lot more often than discs and cartridges die, strangely enough, and stuff like that. So there's a real possibility that your copy that you downloaded might get screwed up, and then like somebody like Steam or PSN could just go out of business, or not go out of business, but maybe just say we're not offering that particular game for download anymore, which has already happened on PSN to me one time. There was a game that I can no longer download, and I don't have a copy installed, and I paid $15 for it. So that's just $15 that's gone off in the wind. And you know, it's happened with physical games where I've lost them or broke them or lend up somebody borrow it or whatever, trade it in for ridiculous rip-off value at, you know, stores that don't deserve being mentioned. But you know, so I don't know. You can see both sides of the fence, but it becomes like a much bigger issue when you talk about the fact that the consoles are now selling digital games. Like I said, this happened to me already on PSN. I would expect it more out of the consoles than out of Steam, personally, but that could be a false sense of security because they just haven't done anything like that yet. Or like, there's been individual games probably, but as far as I would expect, like Sony one day to be like, "Oh, we're no longer letting you download PS3 titles." Like, sorry, like you have a week to download them all. I could see that. I could picture that happening. Whereas like Steam, I don't think they're gonna be like, "Oh, now you can only get newer games." Like, I don't think they would have a reason to do that, and it would be more like the game company saying something, which also happened on consoles, and I think maybe on Steam, yeah, as well, where the Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 thing, where they were like, "Oh, we're no longer having a license from Marvel anymore, so if you didn't get it on disc, or if you have it in your download list, go download it now, because we're taking it off of there," which I thought was totally ridiculous and stupid and bad business on Marvel's part. But I like that's just ass backwards, but apparently that's how they do their licenses. They don't do it like most companies where they're like, "All right, we'll produce the game and you just let it off in the wild and we just make our sales infinitely and so on." Actually, what they do is they're like, "No, just pay us again. for another license for more time, and Capcom's broke, so they're like, nah. So I don't know. That I guess that could be how we start the conversation, because that's how what all people always talk about first is how do you feel about digital versus physical in terms of ownership. Like, do you guys feel like you don't care so much about that factor, or do you feel like you're like strongly against digital because of the ownership issue? Like, where do you guys fall on that before we get into the further topics of like DLC and free to play and indies and new IPs and stuff like that? Before we get into that and updates and bugs, because that's a big one. But shoot the arrow where it falls, guys. I want to hear what you think about just starting off standpoint, like your first impressions or your overall opinions. Like, how did you feel when it first started happening a lot, and how did that opinion change over time? And do you prefer physical for bigger game titles, or do you not care, or like where do you guys stand on all that before we go further?
Um, well, honestly, I have bought Skyrim for the Xbox about 6 times because the game has just gotten scratched or broken into a million pieces or whatever. And I've bought it once on digital download, and now I don't have that sort of problem anymore. Um, I do understand what you're saying, the fact that it could be taken away at some point, but I I feel as far as reliability goes, digital is the way to go.
Somebody else want to jump in here?
All right. So for me, I mean, I haven't really thought about it much, but I'm digital is a lot more reliable. I mean, it's nice to have like a physical copy, like on a shelf or something, in case something bad goes wrong, or just to have it on a shelf so you can go and look at it, something like that. But there's also the fact that when it's a digital distribution, it can be taken off or put on whenever it wants. But whether they have the reason or not, blah blah blah. It, I mean, I'm not sure I really have a big opinion about it too much myself. Uh, but again, I like having a nice physical copy on a shelf somewhere.
So
Now it's that guy's turn.
yeah, before we go forward, Jared kind of flaked on us a little bit there. Jared, you're standing in front of a magical store, right? You got $60 in your pocket, and the digital version 60 and the physical version 60, and all you gotta do is reach your arm out to grab which one. Which one do you grab? And you can't say both, and you can't say you don't care. Ready, go.
Uh, Crap. I'm I'm gonna go for digital just because it is more reliable, and then
Okay.
I'll go for a physical when I have the money.
All right, I see. Okay, so basically you think of it like, wait a minute. Well, I don't understand. Why would you want the physical ever if the digital one's more reliable? Then why do you need the physical one later?
In case, well, it depends on when you're getting it digital, where it's getting, where you're buying it. On Steam, it's a lot reliable. They aren't going to take it away or something. If you get it on uh, the PlayStation Store or something like that, like you said, it can be. Um, they can say you only have a certain amount time to get it, whatever. But I mean, it's I like having a physical copy not only just to show off, but in case something were to happen to like my computer or something, or my OS, and my computer's compromised, then it's nice because I'll have another alternative to play the game.
I see. So you would go for the contingency if you liked a game enough. You're saying you would get both.
Yeah.
All right. So that guy. No, I'm just kidding. You can give yourself the proper introduction if you want, but um,
No, it's fine. You've
Doctor
already.
Doctor Strange.
I've never actually seen that movie.
I mean Doctor Surgeon guy. I just forgot.
I believe that as long as I do prefer digital most of the time, but as long as it's considered my game, like on Steam, it's not really your game. Like if you get banned or whatever on Steam and you don't have the game downloaded, it is not yours anymore. It is lost to the ether.
To be fair, it would be something of your own fault if you got banned. They only really ban people from the forums usually. Like and
I'm just saying it's just a general,
yeah,
it's mine.
I don't think that there's anywhere that technically has that agreement. If you want to be like super duper technical, even if you buy physical, there's a writing in the EULA agreement, which people can argue and say it's not like legal grounds or whatever, but with fact is like we don't really know because it's never gone like fully all the way to a court decision. So for now, as it stands, it is the rules that you don't own any of these games. You just own the license to play it, and they're providing you the license to play it for the money, and the software of installing it and all that crap is just like sort of just there. It's not like it's not the piece that you own. You own the piece of permission to play it, sort of like as if it was a service. You know what I mean? Like Skype. We all can get Skype for free, but if you want Skype Premium, you need to buy the ability to use that. But you can get Skype and download it, install it, and it has all the Skype Premium stuff. You just can't use it. You know what I mean? Like when they did the online pass, you can get the game, but you don't like magically. You're not granted the super like right to play online. You have to have the pass for the old games that did that. And so it was like a thing where you're paying for the service even though all the files are already there. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. We're already on rocky ground with the whole like owning it thing. But I think I know what you meant, and it's basically like you would go with something more like GOG. Is that what you're saying? Like GOG.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they have DRM free. So like with Steam, the only DRM is that you have to sign in, and then it decrypts like your access to the game. Like the whole entire game's not encrypted, but they encrypt like key files, which is like super easy to defeat. By the way, like people have cracked and hacked it like with almost no effort. But so in that sense, I always feel like if Steam ever went bankrupt or something, because it's on a PC, as long as you had the games installed already from your Steam account, you should be able to acquire like little small patches that would remove the Steam DRM like pretty easily. I don't know if it would be considered legal, but if you had like $1,000 worth of games and Steam went out of business, I don't think you would care if it's legal anymore at that point because it's a victimless crime. You know, but GOG is totally different where they don't even have any DRM at all. Like they just straight up have an installer and it just puts files on your computer and then they just work like in the old days before they came up with these CD key protection things and stuff like that. So do you use GOG, by the way?
Only on a minimum, a few games here or there. Mostly free stuff they have.
Is that because of their selection currently being a little bit lacking? And because they mostly sell like older games and niche games?
A little bit. And a little bit of just some like a lot of games on Steam that are older don't for some reason. But that's an entirely different issue, I think, altogether.
Can you say that again? I think I missed what you said there. A lot of older games on Steam, they what?
They don't really work for me for some reason, some of them.
Oh, I see. And they do on GOG, they work?
Yeah. More often than not.
I see.
I use Humble Bundle more actually than GOG, but
Ah, yes, Humble Bundle. Do you always use the bundle, or do you just use the Humble Store? Just curious.
Depends. If I see a game I want, I'm like, oh man, I really like that game. I need it right now.
True, true. Alright, so I guess we can get into the finer points now. But just before we get to the finer points, one last thing I want to say is that I feel bad for people who like bought into the whole like on live craze. I kind of called it, not to be like that guy, but yeah, I kind of called it like 5 years ahead of time when I first was getting in touch with the PR people from there, and I was working at a game site before I made this site, and we even like met up with them at the events and stuff, and got free access to their services and stuff. And it's like you had to pay monthly to be, or yearly rather, to be a part of OnLive, and then you had to pay on top of that to get the game. And now that they're out of business and Sony bought them out, your money of fees and paying for games, this like 1% of people who actually did that, you know, who knows, it's probably thousands of people, which is sad, because it's like maybe not like a significant amount of thousands, but it's still come on, it's still like, even if one guy sat there and was like, all right, here's $150 so I can use it for a year, now here's $40 so I can have Assassin's Creed, and then they're sitting there streaming it and playing it, and then now 5 years later that they don't have anything to show for it at all. I feel like streaming is where I draw the line. I will not pay to stream games that I will not pay the price of ownership to stream games. If I'm going to be streaming a game, I consider that renting, and I want to pay like rental prices. Like $8 for a week is what I'm talking about. Like, not the PlayStation Now is kind of a little bit overpriced still, but I think, and also the fact that there are a bunch of PS3 games where I have a PS3 still. Like, I wasn't one of the people that ran out and sold my PS3, because I think that was, I'm learning from history that that's just not a good idea. When a new system comes out, you should keep the old system if you have games for it, or if you think that you will ever intend to play it, which pretty much everyone will. So it's just like I kept my PS3 because I knew I was going to want to play it again, and then they are selling the ability to stream PS3 games to the PS4, and it's not cheap, especially considering you could just go buy a lot of these PS3 games for like $5, $7, $15, brand new or used, whatever, on disc. And so that is kind of a letdown. I want to see them like develop that more to like maybe where it's like, oh, here's a PS4 game that's like a year old or it's new, rent it for a week for $8, you know, and then like not rent it but like stream it rental, or even if I have to download it and it only lets me play for a certain amount of hours and then it shuts off. If the price is good, like that's what I thought the instant preview PS Plus was going to eventually turn into, was like renting games, but no, it's just 1 hour demos with the full game installed and then trying to get you to buy it, and that's never evolved anywhere past that. Which is like, that's cool and stuff, but whatever. I'm just going on record and saying, like, if Steam announces and they're like, hey, guys, you could just stream games and you don't have to download them, I'm not going to be buying into that. Especially if it's like $50, $40, $60 for like brand new games, and they're like, just stream it, don't download it. And then I'll be like, hell no. And I just wanted to get that out of the way. And do you guys kind of agree that like streaming needs to be treated differently than downloading? Because if it's downloaded and they shut off access, I have like ways that I can make that file work probably, or it just works and it's just, I can't lose the file usually, you know. But with streaming, it's like I literally need to connect to their server to even touch the game.
I agree. I believe that streaming is where you should draw the line, unless, like you said, they would drop the price to a rental fee.
Right. True.
Because whether you go digital or physical, you still own the game in one way or another.
Right, technically speaking, like we covered, but what is it? That reminded me of one other thing, which is damn it, what was I gonna say? That just reminded me about something, but it's escaping my memory for a minute. Alright, so I guess we'll talk about now do you guys think that digital distribution has caused more games to be released with more bugs because now companies know they can just update it?
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how does that make you feel? And how much of a problem is it? Like, how, on a scale of 1 to 10, like, how bad has it become?
About a 7, I think. I think it's hopefully going to be more of a trend that we're going over the hump right now with. Hopefully.
Like, you think it's going to be more of a trend, as in, like, it'll become less of a problem, hopefully? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because of all the like day one patches and all those will hopefully go away, or maybe they'll be more common. But
So you're
Yes.
hoping, like, the backlash against stuff like Assassin's Creed Unity and Mortal Kombat X on the PC recently, and GTA 5 on the PC even needed, like, immediate patching, but that was not as bad as some of the other examples. They just that came down to, like, computer people being weirdos, like typing in dollar signs and exclamation points for your Windows account name. You probably had to know that that was not going to work out anyways. It's probably had caused you problems before GTA, let's be honest. But nonetheless, and they also had a memory leak problem, which they never actually admitted to, but they've patched it 3 times now, where it's like it cranks out how much RAM it's using to the point that it crashes, and it just, like, doesn't delete the old stuff that's in the RAM. It just keeps going and going and going. But maybe that's not a memory leak, so that's why they didn't admit it. Maybe that's just literally how much the game requires, like, because it's just like remembering what's over there, like 25 miles away from you. You know, I'm not sure if that's intended to be in the RAM still, or if that's a memory leak, because they never said yes, it's a memory leak. They just said, you know, crashes should be reduced, and people were reporting on their memory usage X amount of hours in. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel messed up about this because it's like you can get free updates with tons of content, but we don't really see that happening like we used to on the consoles in the major production games. Like, it's happening, but it's not happening as much as it used to. Where it's like you would hear, oh, they're releasing, like, what could be nowadays considered DLC, even though it's like tiny stuff, you know, like, oh, a bunch of costumes and one new level and, like, little tiny stuff. That used to be like the stuff of updates, you know, and they wouldn't necessarily do them, like, all the time because it's not a monthly fee game like World of Warcraft, but they would do them pretty frequently and give you, like, these little snippets of extra stuff. And now they're just like, no, updates are just for fixing stuff. If you want extra stuff, then pay us $7 or $5 or $3. It's like, I don't really do that personally, but I don't know. What do you guys think about that DLC thing? Like, let's be real. DLC is mostly a bad thing to me because I come from the age of computer times where if a game wanted to sell you more content, it was like a significant amount of content and it costed you like $30 or $40. And now it's like, well, we're gonna give you a sword and you're gonna give us $4. Like, not to be a shitty example, but that literally happens in DLC. Not just the mod. That was an example from a paid mods recently, I guess. It was on my mind, but that actually literally stuff like that happens in DLC. Like, for example, multiplayer games with maps. Maps never costed money for shooters back in the days. The community made them, and they made shitloads of them, and the only thing that came out that costed more money was, like, well, towards the end, they started to come out with the official maps that the company made, and that would have, like, new assets that the mod developers creating maps was not considered creating mods back then either. That was just like, oh, hey, we created some maps. And there was just like, oh my god, every shooter game had like 700 maps. Not all of them were good, but there was a ton of maps because people would get the map editor from the developers, like, every time. And then so they would come out with, like, their own maps here and there, but that would be a free update back in the day, whereas now it's like towards the end of it, and now is basically when the Xbox came out, it became oh, now we're charging for this stuff, and it's like, I don't think that's a good thing, because a lot of the companies have lost their way of understanding like what's the difference between an expansion and a free update, and they've fallen into the middle ground of like everything is just DLC. It's like everything is just some form of some size of DLC, instead of thinking like this is an expansion and this is like not even worth money. Like, I don't know, but if you guys um if you guys have any opinions on that, or you want to debate.
I think it's just a sign of the times they are a changing kind of deal. I mean, you still see some of that today, I believe. Like back in the day, we had StarCraft Brood Wars, which was like what you were saying back then. Its own little thing. You can play it.
Right,
I'm
like
trying to find out.
it was like a full piece of content for a significant amount of money. It was like almost made your game into like almost a sequel. Like it was like almost a sequel, but not enough to be a sequel, so they put it out as like a super expansion. Which back then that was the standard for expansions, and it only happened on PC because it was only possible on PC. And ever since it's become possible on consoles, it's been like a downhill spin to where everything is more and more and more and more money for like smaller and smaller and smaller things. Like I said with the maps, $15 for 4 maps, when it used to be 700 maps just came with the game because the community made them because they gave the map editor and they didn't care what happened. And there also used to be people would be willing to pay for their own dedicated servers, and like lots of that stuff still happens on PC, but it never made the jump to console. It's just a bunch of peer-to-peer matchmaking noobs playing like noobs or like ultra competitive dickheads, and then paying $15 for 4 maps every few months like idiots. So it's kind of a weird thing to me. It's bizarre. Like I have a serious love-hate relationship with the shooter genre, like big time. And
How do you feel about Blood Dragon?
Blood Dragon.
The Far Cry 3 Blood
Oh
Dragon.
yeah, oh yeah, I have that actually, and I think that's fucking
I
awesome.
consider it like the Brood Wars thing back in the day, but more modern. Like
I think that's
how you were talking about.
I think that's a perfect example of what digital distribution gives a chance for us, because that's like a totally new idea. It was risky because people might have said, "Oh, that's gay. I don't want it," and not bought it. But it's a low risk because they could sell it digitally. So when you print discs out, you have to pay for them ahead of time, and then if they don't sell what you thought they're going to sell, then you don't get the money back. Or if you don't print enough, you don't get the money you could have got, and they just become retailer gold, you know, where the stores are making the money, or the eBay people are making the money. So with digital, they can just say, all right, it's on the store, it's $15. If you want it, buy it. If you don't, fuck off. And they get as many sales as possible, as long as it's not on PC because of piracy. But you know, my opinion about that is just put it on PC. But that's not a popular opinion. But that's how I honestly feel about that. But like I love PC and playing stuff on PC, but let's just be real. A lot of people steal shit, and they shouldn't have to have it first, you know. But hey, that's just what I think. But that's a whole separate can of worms. I don't know. Like Far Cry Blood Dragon is a perfect example because it actually changes the game and makes it different. It's a whole new campaign, but it's also like a whole new approach. It's got a different visual art style. It's got a different soundtrack. It's got a different storyline and different missions, and it's got different enemies. It's got different weapons. It's got different characters. It's different everything. And like the fact that was only $15. Not saying it could have been more. It probably would have done horrible, but that just shows you like, although Ubisoft fucks up a lot of stuff, a lot of decisions that they make are extremely poor and stupid looking from the outside looking in. They do know what's what. Like, just because they do things that people don't like and they make money off of bad things, it doesn't mean that they don't know better. You know, like these game companies, they love to pretend like they're just, oops, we didn't realize, and like they know every fucking thing that I'm saying. They know all the stuff we're saying, even better than us. They're just, they make certain decisions with certain franchises, like Assassin's Creed Unity. They didn't give a fuck how good it was. They just wanted to get that shit out the door because Watch Dogs was catching controversy, whatever. It got a ton of sales, so they were like, all right, great. But now we just need to pump out an Assassin's Creed before people decide like Ubisoft is a demon. And now they kind of like forced that opinion to happen anyways. But they're lucky that the big companies, they have so many games, they just release as many as they can, and then some of them will succeed. Like one game is going to do so good that it doesn't matter if the rest of them fail. That's kind of like the strategy for the big companies. But yeah, I think Far Cry Blood Dragon's a perfect example, and that kind of goes into my next point, which is that, like I was saying, digital distribution makes it possible for certain free-to-play games to happen, which I would say like some major successes are like RuneScape, which is not really well known per se, but it's had like millions of players at different times. It's always hovering around like 40,000 still to this day, or 80,000, depending on the day. And I don't play that anymore, but just the fact they let you into an MMO that had like a huge amount of content completely for free, and then it came to a point where you had to pay to keep going further, or you could just max yourself out in that little world you were in and keep doing stuff, and it had kind of an endless factor to it. And there was more people not paying than paying, but because they let you experience such a good game for free, the people who stayed and played it for free supported an economy of items and transactions and stuff like that for the players that were higher level who did pay, to have like that economy living in their game to interact with, you know what I mean? And so they ended up making a ton of money because that shit's not cheap. It's like $15 a month or something like that, or I forget what it used to be and what it is or whatever. But also stuff like Far Cry Blood Dragon is possible, which is like more new IP ideas, even though that's only an expansion, but still. Games that are coming out that are brand new IPs, like say Remember Me or Watch Dogs. Like Watch Dogs is a bad example because it was such a high budget, and they printed a lot of discs, and they expected to sell them, and they marketed it and advertised it, and they did sell the discs. However, the fact that digital distribution exists, I think, made it a little bit easier on them, because the people who sell the discs, they're taking a cut out of it and blah, 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 but the digital distribution is mostly going to be in Ubisoft's pocket for that game. Mostly. So, and then there's the fact that they have their own digital distribution service on PC. So it like reduced the risk, you can say. Like it's not, that game's not because of digital, it doesn't exist. But there's a lot of games that, like say Tales from the Borderlands from Telltale Games. Like, do you really think that Gearbox would have came to Telltale Games and said like, all right, we want to print out 1.5 million discs and see if they sell? Like, no, I don't, probably not. And like even the original, like The Walking Dead with Telltale Games, which like launched them to the epicenter of that type of film, TV mixed with a game type of experience. Like that may not have been possible if they were like, all right, we need you to make it like 8 hours, put it on a disc, and then make sure that disc sells. So there's certain things you need to do in that disc. Like they would not have had the creative freedom, and then the companies might have said like, you know what? What's the point of printing all these discs if they might not even sell? There's no proven data that somebody wants to play this experience. So instead it was just like hey, we'll pay you for a few episodes. If it does good, cool. If not, we'll just stop. And then they put out their episode 1, and everyone was like, oh my god, this is crazy. And then like the snowball effect. And now it's like they have reached that point where they're on the PS Vita, and they got one game on the PSP. I think it was 300 Days episode, right? Is that, no? That may be just no. That's the Vita. What am I talking? PSP. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's ideas that are spawning. Like like I said, Tales from the Borderlands. That probably would have not happened if it was just like a matter of Gearbox has to print out 500,000 discs at least, or just not do it. They probably would just not do it, you know. And that's a great game from Telltale. Um, Examples are hard to come up with because they do so good once they finally release. Like here's an example, like Titan Souls. And that brings me to the next topic, which is indies. But at first I just wanted to make the point that it's not just indie games. It's also like new IPs are being born because of this stuff, you know. Which those examples I gave were not new IPs, but so maybe I'm messing up my point. But there's new ideas. Well, there's still new ideas. There are new approaches to an IP. Blood Dragon is borderline new IP. It's almost a new IP because it's not really Far Cry, is it? It's a totally different thing. The gameplay is very influenced and similar, but I don't know. It didn't strike me like a Far Cry game. Like I'm not a huge Far Cry fan, really, but Blood Dragon's awesome. Far Cry 4 is not bad though, but it's, you know, just open.
What were we talking about?
Basically, new ideas coming into digital distribution, and
Right.
yeah, like for example, I was gonna talk about next is indie games, and the fact that it's much easier for a game like Titan Souls. That game was actually a Ludum Dare by 3 people made that game, and it's like a flash game, like, you know, really regular quality game, like that an amateur could have made, and then they uploaded it to a website, and they won an award on a website, and that could have been the end of the story if it wasn't for digital distribution. You know, like 5 dudes on a website and a couple hundred people that downloaded it could have been it. That could have been the end of the story. But Devolver Digital and companies like them, they go around and they find indie companies and they bring their games digitally to the PS4, and in this case just the PS4 and the Vita, but you know, the PS3, the 360, the Xbox One, and on a bigger market like Steam on PC and GOG and stuff like that. It's opening the door for indie companies to make stuff now. So in that respect, I feel like digital distribution is a big like help, you know, but because it removes a lot of the problems with creative freedom, and it allows like much smaller financial risk for a release to happen. So how do you guys feel about that and any other topics you have about physical and digital?
I also feel that digital distribution is very important for indie games because there are some games out there that, like, is this really needing a disc? Does this deserve to have its own physical copy that you can buy at a store? Like a small 80 megabyte indie game or something like that.
Right. Like unless it's to the point where it's so mainstream that people that don't even know how to download stuff want to play it, like Minecraft.
Right.
But until it gets to that point, it should definitely be digital instead. It makes everybody more money, it takes less risk, and there's less pressure for them to sell those copies, so they don't have to sacrifice creativity to sell them. So, I went on a pretty big rant there, but I want to let you guys chime in with stuff you have to say about this. Otherwise, we'll probably give final thoughts, but I will really want to give you guys a chance to like dig into your mind and talk about anything you feel about this topic. And maybe even like a slightly different topic, like what do you think the future will be like with a 5th PlayStation? What's some of the things you could imagine happening with digital and physical next gen? Stuff like that.
Jared,
So let
Andrew?
me think about that for just a moment here.
Alrighty then. So let's all right. Distribution for indies. I'll start with first. I mean, in reality, if you have an indie game and you're trying to get it distributed, there's a bigger base of people that you'll find going for digital distribution rather than physical. You'll have a lot more popularity in that area rather than if you make a disc or something. If you have the money, you can do both, but as it was said before, that can be a bit of a financial risk that a lot of indie developers might not want to take.
Thank you, Jared, and Jared's dog.
Feel free to keep it going, you guys. I know you got more to say than that. You don't have to wait for your
All right.
to be called on. You can just jump right in, you know, like the roller dome, roller dome.
I guess.
Roller Dome.
Oh God.
I guess it's my favorite thing about the digital distribution is the fact that indie developers get to be on the same playing field as mainstream developers. It enables anyone with any sort of skill to create a game and at least get it out there on something like Steam or Xbox or PlayStation online stores. It involves absolutely no risk, you know. I mean, all they lose is the fact that they could sell it in like a retail area, but that wouldn't really be plausible because they are an indie company.
All right, so what do you guys think about the future? Like, what evolutions of digital do you expect to happen? Like, do you think that the streaming to rental thing will ever work out, or is that just gonna be like a non-stop attempt to rip us off? Like, do you think that Sony's gonna screw everybody with the PS3 downloads when they come up with a fifth console that they want to sell? Do you think that, or even sooner? Like, what do you think about that stuff? Because for me, one thing I always wished that they would do is, if they decide we're no longer letting you download PS3 games, I wish they would just put out a patch so that none of the games require you to sign in. Because sometimes they are like, oh, you haven't signed in a while, like, make sure you own this, sign in. And that's the thing that I worry about, the DRM that they've put in place, which I don't mind the DRM being there, because I sign in every couple months anyways. But at least, you know, and most of the time I'm online 24/7 when I use a system, more so on PC, but that's just a convenience factor. But still, like, if they decide, like, alright, PS3's ancient, we don't care about it anymore, I wish they would just be like, alright, here's a patch, so now everything just works. Like, you gotta get bigger hard drive to fit all the stuff that you've bought and download it before the time runs out where they don't offer it. But just give us a patch so it's like, alright, at least the stuff will work until your hard drive breaks, you know? Like, but I don't know. What do you guys think about, not just that, but what do you guys think about like a PS5? Like, how do you imagine that being different for digital distribution? Or even not just that, but how do you imagine that being different in general? Like, from a buying games standpoint.
I don't really have much opinion on the future of digital and streaming and all that. It's all up in the air, I think. But I want to say one thing about PS5 is that when they were testing the PS4 back when it was still in the workshop, they were testing around with smell-o-vision. So, you know, there might be that for the PS5.
Is that supposed to be a joke? Get out of this podcast.
Nope. I'm dead serious.
Smell-o-vision. What
Yeah.
the fuck?
Yeah, that's a thing.
That's a fucking thing?
Yeah.
They had it in the controller, and during certain parts of playtime, they actually had, like, fragments of, like, bullet, like, shells and whatnot, I think, if I'm remembering right, just exhume from the controller, and you actually smell the gunfire from your Call of Duties.
So was this like a chemical reaction, like science thing, or did they just
Yes.
literally have pieces of bullets like in the controller?
I don't really remember right now, but
Do you have to
that
buy,
could be.
like, you know, scented oils and candles and such to put inside of your
I know
controller.
that's what I'm imagining, right? Yeah, like oh, when you smoke weed in GTA 5, you can smell it now, but you gotta buy some weed and shove it in there.
And
Like,
only
what?
from California.
Yeah, and only yeah, or Colorado
Do not open your controller.
or Alaska. It's spreading, man. Alaska's legal too, you know. Do not open your controller.
Well, that's good for the 20 people living there.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that anybody who does that anyways doesn't really give a fuck if it's legal or not, but you know, whatever. But okay.
That's for the next podcast.
Yeah, that's for the
After Dark.
realpoliticsnews.com. We're starting that up soon. And then it'll probably last for a
Okay.
week. Yeah, it'll probably last for a week and then we'll be shut down cuz too many Illuminati's references. But I don't know, man. I feel like excited but concerned and cautious. I feel like I've expected so many like amazing things because when they do stuff like this, you always see like such a potential. Like when they did the PlayStation Plus instant trial back on PS3, where they were like instant game trial, and they were like you get to try a game out for an hour and you install the whole thing and you get to play it for an hour. That seemed like a great time to just be like, all right, you can also rent games, and then they didn't, and then like barely any companies wanted anything to do with that. You know, like most of the companies were like, nah, fuck that, we're not giving you an hour. Like you just can't have that. And then PlayStation Now seemed like even bigger opportunity where they can be like, all right, you can rent PS4 games, you can freaking do this and that. The Xbox One DRM, even though everybody hated it, it had a lot of good ideas to it that never got to see the light of day because Microsoft did a horrible job explaining stuff and marketing it. They just did it like the stupidest way possible, where they were just like, "You got DRM, deal with it," and then everyone's like, "What? No!" And then they were like, "Okay, all right, settle down. You don't got DRM, but it was gonna be cool." And then everyone's like, "Fuck off, whatever you say, Grandpa." Like, sure, it was gonna be cool. But if you actually know like all the stuff they had planned, it was kind of cool. It wasn't like super amazing, but there's just different ideas. Like you could give games to each other digitally, which I mean, people already do that on PC with codes, but it's like it's like a black market and people get screwed over. I don't recommend it. I don't do that stuff, but like people trade codes and sell codes and it's all completely unauthorized, like black market or gray market at least type of stuff. Like recently, for example, one website came out and was like, you can pre-order The Witcher 3 from us and it's only like $40, $38. And everyone's like, how the hell is that possible? And they like looked into it, and then CD Projekt Red, who owns GOG and created the Witcher series, they were like, nah, we didn't give them any codes. So then basically it was a website that's actually pretty legitimate compared to the other gray market sellers, and they do get authorized for codes for the Witcher series and other games, but they just didn't get Witcher 3, right? So they came out and they were like, well, we decided since we didn't get any Witcher 3 codes, we were just going to buy them from a bunch of other stores that did, and then sell them at a loss, just so that we could be more popular. And then everyone's like, so it's like that whole entire world of like semi-authorized or unauthorized or trading and stuff, like that's all like shady business, right? So that's why most people only buy stuff from Steam. And GOG is starting to get big, but it's much smaller than Steam because people don't know who the fuck is GOG. Can I trust GOG? Like all these questions in the air. Just because they're DRM free, that doesn't immediately satisfy questions. Because the fact is, say if it's DRM free, you download the installer, you back it up on 3 hard drives, but they all died, and then like your copy that you were playing died, and say if GOG went out of business, there's nowhere to download it from anymore. So that's the concern people have, is that Steam's just been around so long, it's like unimaginable to wake up one day and Steam's gone. It's like you can't picture that, even though it's definitely possible. But it's just not likely. It's so unlikely that it's just like not even a concern anymore. So I don't know. I'm concerned. I'm cautious. I keep expecting like amazing things and then not getting it. So I try to like nowadays not expect too much. Like for example, the PlayStation 4 was gonna be using multiple cell processors stacked on top of each other, which would have been much more powerful than what is inside of it right now. But they just decided not to do that for whatever reason, and like cell processors are just like gone from the world now. They're just like not a thing. I'm not sure if that's like a military only thing that they sell them to those guys still, or if it's like just literally not profitable enough to do anything with at all. Because the cell processors, the military released a chart of how fast, you know, the Moore's law, where like regular processors get X amount of fast every so often. Well, the cell processor was way beyond that. Like it went right off the charts. But the PS3 cell processor was obviously like a baby step. It was the first one. It wasn't like this is the capabilities of a cell. It was like this is like a Pentium like 1, you know, like of cell. It's not, you know, it's not a good example to represent the chip. And now they've gone to like an APU on Xbox One and PS4, which is not even like they said it was gonna be more like PC this gen, and it like it is, but that's not what PCs do. Like nobody's gaming on APU unless they have no choice, you know, like or if they're just like super into like the latest thing and they just like to buy a new APU every month because none of the APUs are fast enough to compete, especially at a value proposition with a processor graphics card combination. You can't just go get an APU and just do the same thing as a GTX and an i7. It's not going to happen. So it makes me puzzled, like why did they do that? It was obviously just to be cheap. And Nvidia kind of scorched them when they never got the deal this time because PlayStation worked with Nvidia on the PS3 to some extent. The graphics card for the PS3 to some extent. It was like a weird custom chip. And the stuff in the PS4 and Xbox One is still like slightly customized, but not much. Like it's basically an APU, you know. Only difference is they sit their RAM and their APU on top of each other, so it's like it has no bus speeds in between them, pretty much like on the Sony platform. So that's really much like the only difference. But yeah, man, I don't know if they're gonna go with being like a PC, then they have a lot of ground to cover with the digital distribution side of things. Like they need to be more like Steam, and I think that would be a good thing for everybody because Steam shouldn't be like the only thing that's like Steam because that's going to be a dangerous path for us. I think we're already starting to see the downsides of that. Like when they put out the paid mod thing, if they didn't decide like okay the backlash is too much, like we're gonna take it back and then try and make this better. If they never decided that, that could have had a serious negative effect on mods. Even though I was all for mods getting paid and the paid mod system I think is a good idea, it just execution of it was horrible. And like the fact that they don't have any interest in like filtering out like what's a good mod, what's a shitty mod, what's a stolen mod. They don't have any interest in doing that. And Bethesda also had no interest in doing that apparently. The fact that that situation is happening means that would have been bad if they kept that around. If they were just like, you know what, we don't give a shit if you're mad, it's staying. Like it would be good for GOG because GOG would probably get bigger than ever. But it's like just out of spite. But it's like it'll be great to see Microsoft and Sony really like come into a maturity with their digital distribution because I feel like PS3 and 360 were like primitive as hell for digital distribution. It was kind of like the Wii. Like the Wii was just slightly worse because there was no account. So if you downloaded a bunch of stuff that you paid for on the Wii or the regular DS also, and then like your system broke, those games are just completely gone. You'll never get them again. Like there's no download account to sign into and find them again. Which they fixed that with 3DS and Wii U, but it's still like this primitive like janky system that feels like they could turn it off at any moment just because they don't want to do it anymore. But PS3 and 360 were kind of like that, and now, but they gave you the account and like that allowed you to share with people, which was like pretty cool. And now PS4 and Xbox One, it's like they didn't even really try to go beyond that. It's like the same exact thing, pretty much. I mean, I don't know. So I kind of feel like if they don't have any pressure or any like super good ideas that they think are gonna like sell their system, like it has to be like one of them has to take a stand, and that's what I think Microsoft was trying to do, but they just got cut off short because they did it in such a shitty way that no one was interested. But somebody, one of those two has to be like, we're gonna be totally digital, cool, and this stuff's like not digital only. That's a bad idea, but just have amazing digital features, and that way the other one will feel the pressure to do it, and then they can actually start to compete with Steam for technical capability. You know, like I don't know. Maybe I'm
Definitely.
just talking silly.
I would really like to see that.
Yeah, and then also like encouraging the game companies to do sales. Like whatever it is about Microsoft and Sony that they're doing wrong, they need to do it better. Or if it's the game companies themselves that just greedy, like putting games on discount is not a bad thing. I would say don't do it to the point where Steam has done it on console, because that's like selling yourself short, sort of. Like it's become like, and that's because of, you know, anybody can put a game on Steam now. But it's like it's become to the point where there's a ton of people that are just like, I will just flat out not buy something unless it's on discount at Steam. And you don't want that to happen on console, but you should have it to some point where it's like, okay, you can get the digital version for $45 or $49 day one. Like, why should I pay $60 for the digital when you're saving so much money and you're making so much bigger profit? You don't have, like, just the fact that there's no store involved, they're making, like, let's see, if you take Sony's cut out of it, I don't want to be, like, exact here because it varies from game to game, but just approximately $20 more they're making. So why do I have to still give you all that money? Like, I want them to get more money. I don't want them to give me all of the discount, because then it's completely pointless for them to give it to me digitally. But I want them to get a profit and pass on like a little savings to me. Like, why can't it be $55 and no, like, take care of the fucking tax for us? Or maybe if you can't do that, just $55, like $52. Why can't it be just a little bit cheaper to get a digital, and then you encourage people to buy a digital? I don't know. I feel like they'll be more likely to play the game for a longer period of time, which means that they're more likely to buy DLC. Because if they just say play the game for a couple weeks and then sell it, which a lot of people do on physical end of things, which I don't agree with that. I think it's just a shitty idea for you, because you'll want to play it someday, unless it's like terrible, but you probably will want to play it someday. Most of the games that people decide to spend 60 on are not terrible, you know. I mean, I guess it depends on your taste, but most of the games I buy for like 40 to 60 range are not terrible games. Like, I regret selling them, is what I'm trying to say, you know. But but say if I have a digital game, like I have some games digital, and I may uninstall that game for space or whatever for a while, but say if they come out with a DLC, I can remember fondly back on that game, like, oh yeah, I like that game, I haven't played that game in a while. You know, this DLC can be a reason for me to install it again, go buy the DLC, and play it again. And so I feel like there's so many advantages just for even a little discount, like $5, $8 off, would go a long way to get in digital distribution to keep progressing in the mainstream AAA market. But they I guess maybe those guys feel like they don't give a fuck, like they don't need it to progress or whatever. But to me, I feel like digital distribution is just inevitable. It's not. I don't one of those guys that believes it's gonna take over completely. But I'll tell you this: the fact that you have to install every fucking game, almost every game on PS3 and PS4, is not a good sign. Like, why the fuck do I need this disc if I have to install the entire disc anyways? Like, that used to be one of the advantages of physical is like I can just turn this on and it just works. And now it's like, nah, you gotta install the entire fucking game anyways. You might as well have given it to me digital at that point. I mean, there's still advantages to having physical, like you can sell it and you're immune to their server changes, but it's like definitely one of the advantages that are gone now is that you used to be able to just play it, and now you can't do that. So
Are those your final thoughts?
I guess. I mean, if you guys don't have anything further, then yeah, we can close
I
it
have
out.
one thing to say.
All right.
I'm gonna just like everything else, digital distribution and all its ilk is climbing a slope to a better tomorrow, and I'm gonna be cautious, a bit wary, but optimistic that's gonna go somewhere better than this.
Hmm.
All right. Thank you for that. Anybody else got any final thoughts?
One last thing I thought about was that is something you can't do with any digital stuff is you can sell it or trade it with anyone, you know? I could go give my friend a copy of a game, I could go sell it at GameStop or, whatever.
That's
I have
true.
bought lots of digital games that I wish I could sell because they were horrible.
I see your point, and there's becoming like a kind of a outcry of people who expect that they can get refunds for digital games, and all of the game companies when they first did all this, it's like Steam, PlayStation Network, and Xbox Live particularly, they have a no refunds policy in place, but they provide refunds under certain circumstances. Usually, if people complain enough, but not every time. It's not. It's like a super gray area right now because the fact is, the law in our country and in our states and in other countries, there's laws that say like you have to give a refund within X amount of days. I forget what exactly they call it. Something about 30-day trial or something like that. There's like laws to protect you from people who say no refunds, and you have to give somebody a refund under certain circumstances. Usually, like if the product doesn't work correctly, which is becoming a huge issue with like early access games. But that's kind of like it's kind of like a consumer abuse thing in both directions because it's like on the one hand you're probably being lied to in the marketing and you think this is going to be a good game, or if it's an early access you think X amount of pieces are done and it'll eventually be done, and then you buy it and you're wrong, or well the marketing was like misleading, and that in that case I would say like okay, I see your point, but it's buyer beware. And then in the other case, there's just people that just buy games which are completely working products that they just don't happen to like, and then they want a refund for that. And in that situation, I kind of feel like you shouldn't get one because it would undermine the whole entire idea of digital distribution to me. Like somebody could just say like, well, I just don't like that game, I want the refund, and they could have downloaded it and put it on Pirate Bay and asked somebody to crack it, or they could have downloaded it, played it to their heart's content, because like a lot of these mini games don't really take that many hours to get bored of to some extent, especially on like Steam where people have like 300 or 3,000 games, and they'll spend like 2 or 3 hours on one and be like, all right, that was good, I got my $5 worth. But then if they're like, all right, I got my $5 worth, now I'm going to return it, that just like undermines the whole entire situation to me, because you're going to end up eventually, Steam's not just going to take the loss, like they're going to eventually, it's going to hurt the company that made the game. And if they make like a game that people have fun with for 3 hours and then stop, and then some percentage of those people want the money back just because they can, that's going to cause a problem. And all the laws that say like, oh, you have to give refunds, those are only for physical products. There's no law exists for digital refunds. There's no such thing. So it's basically the only reason that Sony and Microsoft and Steam are even giving any disc refunds is because they want to keep it in the gray area to where they can deny some people and put the front across that you can't do it as long as possible while they're waiting for the legal system to make new laws, because they don't want it to become a case of like 7,000 people are suing Valve for a refund, like, which is kind of almost happening already. Like, we're reaching the point where it's almost over, like this gray area timing. But when it first started, yeah, man, I got told by Sony a lot of times there's no refunds on PS3 because of stuff happening. Like, one time I was just trying to check out the price for something that I already had digital copies of on other accounts and a physical copy of, and I was on some other account, and I was like, let me just look what the price is right now for my friend. Stupidly, which is my fault, I went too far in the menu, and then it was like, thank you for your purchase, and I was like, what? No! And then so I tried to hit them up like, hey, you know, I know this isn't what you normally do, but I want a refund. I accidentally clicked bought it, and they were like, fuck off, no. And I was like, okay. And then there was a situation where we received a MMO game, DC Universe Online, when it costed money back then for a review for review copy. This is a whole mess of a situation. For review copy, right? And got like super far in it too, like a really high level character. And then like a year passed and they still were charging money monthly, and all of a sudden it was like we got hit with a yearly subscription fee for the next year. Like they were renewing a subscription that we never agreed to. And then they tried to say no to refunding that, even though it was like a press like fuck up, not like a consumer just buying it by accident, you know. They tried to say no to that, and then, you know, we like not exactly politely told them like, hey, this wouldn't look good for you in the press if you were to do this. You know, we will write articles about it. And they were like, alright, here's a refund. However, you're fucking banned from the game. And they like fucked up the character to where it's like you can't even when they went free to play. Yeah, they went free to play with the game shortly after, few months after, because it's a fucking flop anyways. They went free to play with the game, whether you like it or not. It's a flop, like financially. And Sony Online Entertainment's always flopping. That's why they sold them. But just financially, I don't think their games are bad per se. They're just average, which is the problem. But you know, then they went free to play. Still can't play that character. Still can't get into that account. They just like have this like really spiteful, like mean, like banning system. And then like now they've reached the point where if you say like, oh, I got hacked and I want refunds for this, sometimes they'll help with you, and sometimes they'll just tell you like, you know, you can have PSN credit, and that's it. And if you don't like it, like, we'll just ban you from all of PSN and just fuck off. All your downloads will just be gone. Like, so I don't even know why I just went on that ramble. Oh yeah, because you're talking about sometimes you can't. I will say this, like from the refund point of view and like the selling games point of view, it's very like dangerous to get caught into situations like that. Although I would say that they're probably a little rare, but I understand that stuff needs work, and that stuff I agree with you. Like it's a problem to some extent. I just don't want to see it abused to where it's like everybody just buys this fun 5-hour game and then returns it. I don't want to see that ever happen, and then developers left out in the cold. Even though he's got like 10 million people have played his game, he's broke because Valve took all the money back, like type of thing. Like I don't want that to happen, but I also don't want to see people getting screwed, like how Sony has dicked around me and other people like that. And I'm lucky, like a few times I lost access to my account. Like one time I changed which email it was on a website that they run, that just totally was like, yeah, it's fine, just type in a different email. And then I did that, and then it like blocked me out from the website because I had changed it, right? So I go type in what it is now, doesn't work. And Apple likes to play this game too, where they pretend that your password doesn't work, even though you just changed it and you know it works. It's like some sort of like a scam thing, or like a bad server protocol, or probably just a glitch type of thing. But it's all too coincidence how it fucks you over and works out for them major, right? But yeah, like tons of people have lost all their iTunes music and stuff from something like this happening. And so, anyways, I go through all the hassle of getting in touch with customer support, and I'm like, listen, I've been with PSN for like the whole time. Like, what the hell? Help me out here. All I did was change the email, and they like made me do all these different things. I was like, can I just tell you my bank card? And they were like, no. They're like, you need to know this and that and that and this. And I'm like, what the fuck? I don't know. Like my passwords for the past 12 years? What the fuck? But you know, stuff like that. And then so it's like we came to the point where I was on the phone with a specialist and they were like, "All right, we're going to give you your account back, but here's the deal. If you forget your password," and I stopped him. I was like, "I didn't forget the password. I changed my email on your site." And he was like, "Listen, if you lose access to this account again," he's like, "it's been so many times that you've asked us for a new password or this or that, that if you do it again, we have the right to remove your access to the account permanently and call it account negligence." And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? That's not even a good idea for you. Like, I could just go to Xbox or PC and never spend money with you again. Like, why would you even want to do that? But he was just like, this is just Sony's rules. And he was all like bitchy, and you could tell he dealt with like idiots and people trying to game the system and abuse like Sony all day. That's why he was like whiny. But I'm just a regular dude trying to, and that's, you know, one bad apple ruins it for everybody, man. That's why I kind of feel like really nervous. I feel really nervous about the digital refund thing. Like I don't ask for those, like almost never. And if you ask for it too many times on certain places, you will get banned from those places. Like I have a friend who buys tons of PC parts and then he like brings them to their knees, like benchmarking them and all this stuff like that, and then he's like, "Well, that was kind of cool, but it's not the kind of like the performance I thought," and then he just returns it. And like in a in like a store you go to in person, they do it for you as like a customer service thing, but they don't, like, they're just doing that so that they don't have pissed off people in their face, right? And because it's just the old way of doing things, right? But if you want to be technical, do I think he should be able to do that? No. Like, you're taking a PC part, you're bringing it home, and you're like doing God knows what to it from technical standpoints. Like, you can even unlock higher speeds on these things, overclock them and stuff, and that can cause damage, no matter how small the damage. When I go into a store and I tell them, hey, I want to buy a fucking GTX, I don't expect them to give me one that somebody overclocked, even for 2 seconds. It better not be, or I'm going to be pissed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll probably never find out. I'll just get screwed because it'll just die like a year ahead of schedule because somebody brought it home for 10 days and did whatever the fuck to it. And so it's like, that's another situation. Like he tried that shit with Amazon and they banned him because they were like, you've returned too many products. And he's like, that's bullshit. I need to have the right to return things. And it's like, okay, yeah, people have rights, but just like free speech, you have rights, but you also have the consequences to what you do with them. Like, if Steam just lets everybody return any game for like 5-day period, let's say, that could get abused so hard. So, and like the gray area system that they have now is not good because, like I said, you can end up with people taking your account away for things that's not right. Like they almost told me they were going to do to me with PlayStation Network, which I have like, I don't know, $500, $600 of games on there, probably more, and DLC and stuff. And then most of it I don't even play anymore, but still, you know, like Killzone 2 DLC, I'm not going to play that anymore, but I don't even think anybody does. But still, it's just the point.
Mm-hmm.
That they would threaten to like remove me from their service just because I couldn't access my account a few times. That's stupid. Like, I can prove it's, you know, it's not like somebody else trying to get my account. It's me still. It's just, oh, you forgot it too many times. That's a stupid reason to do it. So like, it's not good that we're in such a gray area, but I don't think it can't be to the point where like you can just return anything. Like, that's not going to go good because you're just going to get people like that, like I said, who just want to try everything out. And there's, you know, you should only be able to get a demo at that point. You shouldn't be able to get the whole entire product, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel. But in regards to the sharing thing, that is an area where they can easily improve and make something really cool out of it. Like, they can make it sound neat and marketable and fun and like, not feel
Definitely.
like, yeah, like Xbox claims that they were gonna try to do something cool with like family sharing on Xbox One without the before they got the DRM thing happen to them, and now they said like they're still doing it, but it's obviously not. It's not innovative. It's just basically Steam family sharing copied over to Xbox One.
I feel like this might deserve its own podcast. This topic in particular.
Good point. All right, it probably could. Well, I just
Save that for next week.
yeah, totally. But I just
Definitely.
think like things like Steam family sharing is a good example of the fact that I don't think like companies I don't think they're gonna like eliminate sharing with your friends like completely. They're just
Mhm.
they need to find ways to profit off of it and not give the whole thing up. But
Right.
that's definitely something we could go further into. I appreciate you guys for coming on the show and ranting with me and all that stuff. It's been a good time. So everybody,
Totally.
do you have any final thoughts?
Yes, I am tired.
All right, and
Go
cheesecake,
to bed.
firecrackers,
No, I was joking.
turtles. No, I'm just all right. So yeah, check out iGeekReviews.com and check out RealGamerNews.com. Thank you everybody for checking us out. I'm gonna be doing gameplays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on this Twitch channel, twitch.tv/RealGamerNews, almost every day. And then there will be some random times too, so check out our Twitter if you want to know exactly when we're doing it, or follow the channel, etc., etc. There's a million places you can follow us, so it's up to you where you want to do that. And then we will be doing a podcast soon for our E3 predictions. And that's going to be tomorrow on this channel live at 6 p.m. Eastern. But also it'll be on the website realgamernews.com with like a YouTube version. So I'm not exactly sure what time that YouTube version will come out, but if you missed the live show, you can check it out in the past broadcast section of this Twitch channel, or you can go to realgamernews.com and just keep looking for it. It's probably easier. And also, we will be doing a podcast every Wednesday about most Wednesdays on this channel at 6 p.m. EST. And so this is a new thing we're working on. Like what you're seeing right now is sort of like a beta experiment. It might look cooler down the line. And exactly what time I do stuff on the Twitch is sort of like in the beta because I don't know like what's a good scheduling that works out. But I feels like 3 p.m. for gaming and 6 p.m. for podcasting is working out pretty good. So thanks for checking us out. Much love to everybody. Keep it real. Keep it gaming. Peace.